Next, we have a lot of definitions. A census is a count or measure of an entire population. So this provides complete information, but it is usually costly or difficult to perform. A sampling is a count or measure of a sample, which is part of a population, and it's used to estimate a census of a population. A random sampling is a sample in which every member of a population has an equal chance of being selected to that sample. Sampling bias occurs when a sample is collected from a population and some members are not as likely to be chosen as others. And when the sample is biased, it can lead to incorrect conclusions being drawn about the entire population being studied. And then lastly, sampling error. This is the difference between the results of a sample and the results of the entire population. Now we are going to be looking at 5 sampling techniques. And the first one is the simple random sample. So to find a simple random sample, we assign all members of a population a number. And then we keep selecting different random numbers to select the sample members. So example 1, we select person 3, 71, 21, 88, 16, etc. So those are all random numbers. And then example 2, we are selecting different random numbers. So in our diagram, we are selecting 6 members at random. Number 2 is the systematic sample. We want to assign all members of a population a number, and then one random number is selected, and sample members are selected at regular intervals. So unlike number 1, the simple random sample, we're not selecting a different random number each time. We are just selecting one random number at the beginning, and then that tells us how to select the members at regular intervals. So if we select a random number of 3, we would select every third person. So multiples of 3, 3, 6, 9, etc. If we select a random number of 4 at the beginning, we would select every fourth person. So 4, 8, 12, etc. And in our diagram, we are selecting our 6 people by choosing every third person. Next we have the stratified sample, and this is used when it is important for a sample to have members from each segment of a population. The population is first divided into subgroups with similar characteristics called strata. Depending on what is being studied, strata could be chosen based on age, income, ethnicity, political preference, etc. And a sample is then created by selecting a proportionate number of random members from each strata. So for example, we have a population of 1 million people, and we are going to break it into 3 strata by age. So 40% of the population, or 400,000 people, is below the age of 35. 35% of the population, or 350,000 people, is between 35 and 60. And 25% of the population, or 250,000 people, is above the age of 60. So when we create the sample, we want to make sure that the breakdown is proportionate to the population. So we are going to create a sample of 1,000 people. 40% or 400 people are chosen at random from people who are below the age of 35. 35% or 350 people are chosen at random from people who are between 35 and 60. And 25% or 250 people are chosen at random from people who are above the age of 60. So let's look at our diagram. We have 18 people total, and 6 of them are green and 12 of them are blue. So that's a third green and 2/3 blue. So when we create our sample of 6 people, we need to make sure that it's consistent with the population. So of the 6 people, 2 have to be green because that's 1/3, and 4 have to be blue because that's 2/3. And within those strata, the people are chosen at random. Next is the cluster sample. The population is first divided into subgroups called clusters. Then some of the clusters are randomly selected, and all individuals within the cluster become part of the sample. So for example, a college faculty is divided into 10 clusters based on the college's 10 departments. A sample is created by randomly selecting 4 clusters, and all the individuals within those 4 departments become the sample. So if we look at our diagram, we have our 18 people, and we've divided them into 6 clusters. And we are trying to get a sample of 6 people. So we are going to randomly select 2 clusters, and we are going to take all members of those clusters, and that's going to be our sample. The fifth technique is the convenient sample, which is not random and it's not really good. So this consists only of members of the population that are easy to get, and it often leads to biased, inaccurate, or unreliable results. So an example would be the self-selected sample, and this is responses only by people who choose to respond, such as call-in surveys. And in our diagram of 18 people, we select just the first 6 to get our sample. So that's a convenient sample. It's not random. Identify the sampling technique used. Number 9 says, chosen at random, 500 rural and 500 urban people age 65 or older are asked about their health and their experience with prescription medicine. So the population was divided into 2 groups, and then members are chosen at random from within those 2 groups. So this would be a stratified sample.